It is almost impossible to imagine American television history without MASH star. When the show first aired in 1972, few people expected it to become one of the most influential series ever made. At first glance, it looked like just another comedy, set during the Korean War and filled with jokes, pranks, and quirky characters. But very quickly, audiences realized that MASH was doing something different. It wasn't just trying to make people laugh. It was trying to make them think, feel, and reflect on the true cost of war. By blending humor with sadness and comedy with tragedy, the show created a style that had never been seen before on television. This unique approach is exactly why the actors who left the show did not simply quit a job, but walked away from something much bigger, something emotionally intense and creatively demanding. MASH was set during the Korean War, but it aired during the final years of the Vietnam War. This timing mattered a great deal. While the show never directly talked about Vietnam, viewers clearly understood the message. The chaos, confusion, and emotional pain shown in the series reflected what many Americans were feeling in real life. The doctors and nurses in the 4077 Mobile Army Surgical Hospital were surrounded by death every day, yet they used humor as a way to survive. This balance between laughter and heartbreak became the heart of the show. However, maintaining that balance was not easy, especially for the actors who had to live inside those emotions season after season. As the show grew more popular, also grew more serious. Early episodes focused more on jokes and fast-paced humor, but later seasons leaned heavily into emotional storytelling and moral questions. Characters were no longer just funny stereotypes. They became complex people with fears, regrets, and personal struggles. While many viewers loved this deeper approach, not everyone behind the scenes felt comfortable with the direction. Some actors felt their characters were not growing at the same pace as others. Some felt emotionally drained. Others worried they were being pushed into narrow roles that could limit their future careers. These concerns slowly built up and eventually led several major cast members to leave the show. Another important factor was the creative leadership behind MASH star. Alan Alda, who played Hawkeye Pierce, became more involved in writing and directing as the series went on. His talent and passion helped elevate the show, but also shifted the focus toward his character. Hawkeye became the emotional center of the series, often delivering long speeches about war, morality, and humanity. While this made the show stronger in many ways, it also caused tension. Some actors felt their characters were becoming less important, reduced to supporting roles rather than equal partners in storytelling. This imbalance became one of the main reasons behind several high-profile exits. The working environment itself was also intense. Filming schedules were long, scripts were emotionally heavy, and the subject matter was often dark. Playing characters who dealt with constant trauma took a psychological toll. For some actors, especially those with families or personal struggles, the pressure became too much. Leaving MASH was not always about ambition or ego. In many cases, it was about survival, mental health, and a desire for a more balanced life. What made these departures especially powerful was how the show handled them. Unlike many sitcoms, MASH did not simply replace characters without explanation. Some exits were shocking, heartbreaking, and permanent. These moments reminded audiences that MASH was, at its core, a war story. In war, people leave suddenly. Sometimes they do not come back. The decisions actors made to leave the show ended up strengthening its message. Even when those decisions were painful for fans, I end the sections ahead. We will explore the real reasons why several beloved MASH actors chose to walk away. Their stories reveal not only the challenges of working on one of television's greatest shows, but also the human cost of creating something truly meaningful. Among all the actors who left MASH no departure was more shocking or emotionally powerful than that of McLean Stevenson, who played Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake. From the very beginning of the show, Henry Blake was one of the most lovable characters. He was not a heroic leader or a strict commander. Instead, he felt human. He was often confused, overwhelmed, and clearly unprepared for the chaos of war. Yet, that was exactly why audiences loved him. Henry Blake represented the ordinary man thrown into an impossible situation, try his best to lead, while quietly longing for home. McLean Stevenson played the role with warmth, humor, and sincerity, making Henry Blake the emotional anchor of the early seasons. Behind the scenes, however, Stevenson was growing increasingly unhappy. When MASH Asterisk first began, it was marketed as an ensemble show. This meant that no single character was supposed to dominate the story. Everyone had a moment to shine. But as the series progressed, the focus began shifting more toward Hawkeye Pierce, played by Alan Alda. Hawkeye's role grew deeper and more central, especially as Alda became more involved in writing and directing. While this helped the show evolve creatively, it also left some cast members feeling sidelined. For Stevenson, this shift was particularly frustrating. He felt his character was no longer growing and that his role was becoming smaller with each season. Stevenson was also thinking about his future. At the time, television actors often worried about being typecast. Playing one character for too long could trap an actor in that role forever. Stevenson believed he had the talent and charisma to lead his own show. He wanted to be more than just a supporting character. In interviews, he openly admitted that he wanted to be number one. While some people later criticized him for this honesty, his feelings were understandable. Hollywood can be unforgiving, and actors often feel pressure to seize opportunities before they disappear. At the end of the third season, Stevenson made the difficult decision to leave MASH star. Traditionally, sitcoms handled cast departures gently. Characters were transferred, reassigned, or sent off with happy endings. But MASH Asterisk was not a traditional sitcom. Its creators saw Stevenson's exit as a chance to remind audiences of the harsh reality of war. In war, not everyone gets to go home safely. This idea led to one of the most unforgettable moments in television history. I end the season finale episode titled Abyssinia, Henry. Viewers watched Henry Blake receive his discharge papers. The episode was filled with celebration, laughter, and emotional goodbyes. Everything felt hopeful. Then, in the final moments, Radar entered the operating room and delivered a single, devastating line. Henry Blake's plane had been shot down. There were no survivors. The room fell silent. There was no music, no jokes, no comfort, just shock. This moment stunned audiences across America. It was the first time a major sitcom had killed off a beloved character so suddenly and without warning. The reaction was immediate and intense. CBS received thousands of letters. Some viewers praised the show's honesty and bravery. Others were angry and heartbroken. Many felt betrayed. But the creators stood by their decision. They wanted viewers to understand that MASH Asterisk was not just entertainment. It was a story about war, and war does not offer neat endings. For Stevenson, life after MASH Asterisk did not unfold as he had hoped. He signed a major deal with another network and starred in new sitcoms, but none matched the success of MASH star. Over time, he admitted that leaving the show was a mistake. He realized that what he had walked away from was not just a job, but a rare creative experience. Ironically, his departure gave MASH Asterisk one of its most powerful moments. Henry Blake's death became part of television history, ensuring that Stevenson's legacy would live on, even if his career never reached the heights he once imagined. While McLean Stevenson's departure from MASH Asterisk shocked the world with tragedy, Wayne Rogers' exit was far quieter, but just as important to the show's evolution. Wayne Rogers played Trapper John McIntyre, one half of the original comedic duo that defined the early seasons of MASH star. Alongside Hawkeye Pierce, Trapper was clever, rebellious, charming, and full of fast-paced humor. The chemistry between Rogers and Alan Alda was natural and electric, making their friendship feel genuine and deeply entertaining. For many early fans, Hawkeye and Trapper together were the soul of the show. When Wayne Rogers joined MASH Asterisk, he believed he was signing on to a true ensemble series. He expected that the main characters would share the spotlight equally, with balanced screen time and story development. In the beginning, this seemed true. However, as the show progressed, the creative direction began to shift. Hawkeye Pierce gradually became more than just one of the leads. He turned into the moral center of the show, often delivering emotional speeches and guiding the tone of the story. As Alan Alda's influence behind the scenes increased, Hawkeye's role expanded even further. For Rogers, this shift created a growing sense of frustration. Trapper John, once an equal partner in the show's humor and heart, started to feel like a supporting character. While Hawkeye evolved emotionally, Trapper remained mostly the same. His character didn't receive the same depth or growth. Rogers later explained that it wasn't about jealousy or ego, it was about storytelling. He felt that Trapper had become a character who simply nodded along, agreeing with Hawkeye rather than standing as his own fully developed person. For an actor who cared deeply about character integrity, this was difficult to accept. Unlike Stevenson, Rogers did not make a public announcement or demand a dramatic farewell. He chose a quieter path. After season 3, he simply decided not to renew his contract. What made the situation even more unusual was the nature of his contract. Rogers had been working on a handshake agreement rather than a formally signed contract. This meant that when producers threatened legal action, they had no legal grounds to stop him from leaving. He had not broken any rules. He had simply chosen to walk away. That Rogers' departure created a serious challenge for the show's writers. There was no time to prepare a farewell episode, and no emotional goodbye for the character. When season 4 began, Trapper John was suddenly gone, explained away with a brief line stating that he had been discharged while Hawkeye was on leave. Many fans were confused and upset. After losing Henry Blake, viewers were shocked to see another beloved character disappear without closure. Some even questioned whether the show could survive these losses. T.O. filled the gap. The writers introduced a new character, B.J. Honeycutt, played by Mike Farrell. Unlike Trapper, B.J. was written as more grounded, faithful, and emotionally reflective. His presence softened the tone of the show and allowed for deeper, more serious storytelling. While some fans missed the playful energy of the early seasons, others felt the show grew stronger and more mature with this change. Over time, BJ became a beloved character in his own right. After leaving MASH Asterisk, Wayne Rogers took an unexpected path. While he continued acting for a time, he gradually moved away from Hollywood altogether. Using his intelligence and education, he built a successful career as a financial investor and commentator. He appeared on television discussing economics and business, eventually becoming far wealthier than he ever was as an actor. Despite leaving the spotlight, he never expressed bitterness about MASH star. He remained on good terms with the cast, especially Alan Alda, who often spoke warmly of him. Wayne Rogers' exit may not have been dramatic, but its impact was lasting. It marked a turning point in MASH Asterisk, signaling the end of its lighter, buddy comedy era and the beginning of a deeper, more emotional phase. His decision reshaped the show's identity, proving that sometimes the quietest exits create the loudest changes. Gary Berghoff's departure from MASH Asterisk was not driven by ambition, creative conflict, or frustration with screen time. Instead, it was rooted in something far more personal and painful, emotional exhaustion. Berghoff played Corporal Walter Radar O'Reilly, one of the most beloved characters in television history. Radar was gentle, innocent, and almost childlike, yet incredibly capable. He could sense helicopters before anyone else, manage the chaos of the 4077th, and provide quiet comfort during the darkest moments. For many viewers, Radar represented the heart and soul of MASH star. What made Berghoff's performance especially powerful was how deeply he connected with the character. He was the only actor from the original MASH Asterisk film to carry his role into the television series. While the film version of Radar was more mischievous and rough around the edges, Berghoff transformed him into a symbol of innocence slowly eroded by war. This emotional depth made Radar unforgettable, but it also placed a heavy burden on the actor portraying him. As the years went on, the emotional weight of the role began to take its toll. MASH Asterisk was not an easy show to film. The long hours, intense subject matter, and constant need to balance humor with tragedy created a demanding environment. Berghoff was known for being a perfectionist, often putting immense pressure on himself to get every scene exactly right. Combined with the emotional heaviness of Radar storylines, this perfectionism led to burnout. At the same time, Berghoff was facing personal challenges. He struggled with anxiety and depression, issues that were rarely discussed openly at the time. Mental health was not a common topic in Hollywood during the 1970s, and actors were often expected to push through their struggles in silence. Berghoff also felt the strain of being away from his family. As his personal life grew more important to him, the demanding schedule of MASH Asterisk began to feel unsustainable. Missing milestones in his daughter's early life became a source of deep regret. There were also practical concerns. Berghoff felt that his contribution to the show was not always fully recognized, particularly when it came to compensation and creative flexibility. While the producers did try to accommodate him by reducing his workload and allowing fewer appearances per season, these adjustments were not enough. Emotionally, he was exhausted. By the time season 8 approached, Berghoff realized that staying on the show would come at too high a personal cost. Unlike Wayne Rogers' sudden disappearance, Berghoff was given a proper farewell. The two-part episode, Goodbye, Radar, allowed the character to leave with dignity and emotional closure. In the storyline, Radar realizes that the unit cannot rely on him forever and that his mother needs him back home. The final image of Radar walking away, leaving his teddy bear behind, was deeply symbolic. It marked the end of innocence, not just for the character, but for the show itself. Audiences felt this loss deeply. Radar's exit wasn't just a departure of a character. It felt like saying goodbye to a piece of the show's emotional foundation. After leaving MASH Asterisk, Berghoff largely stepped away from acting. He appeared in a short-lived spin-off and a few guest roles, but he eventually chose a quieter life. He devoted his time to painting, wildlife conservation, and inventing, even earning patents for his ideas. Berghoff later explained that he left for two simple reasons: family and burnout. His decision highlighted an often overlooked truth about television success. Sometimes, walking away from fame is not a failure, but an act of self-preservation. His departure reminded viewers that the people behind beloved characters are human beings, carrying real emotional weight long after the cameras stop rolling. Larry Linville's departure from MASH Asterisk was one of the most thoughtful and creatively honest exits in the show's long history. Linville played Major Frank Burns, a character audiences love to hate. Frank was rigid, insecure, petty, and obsessed with rules. He represented everything wrong with blind obedience and war. While Hawkeye and his allies challenged authority and questioned morality, Frank clung to rank and protocol, often revealing his own deep fears and weaknesses in the process. Linville portrayed this character with remarkable precision, turning Frank Burns into a perfect comedic villain. From the start, Frank Burns was designed to be a one-note character. He was meant to be an obstacle rather than a hero, someone whose flaws could be exposed for humor and moral contrast. In the early seasons, this worked extremely well. Frank's constant clashes with Hawkeye and Trapper provided much of the show's comedy. His secret relationship with Margaret Houlihan added another layer of hypocrisy to his personality. Audiences laughed at Frank because he represented authority without compassion. However, as MASH Asterisk evolved, its tone began to change. The show moved away from simple good versus bad dynamics and toward more nuanced storytelling. Characters who were once comic stereotypes grew more complex and human. Hawkeye struggled with trauma, Margaret became stronger and more independent, and even supporting characters gained emotional depth. Frank Burns, however, remained frozen in place. His cruelty never softened, his beliefs were never challenged, and his personality did not grow. Over time, this made him feel out of place in a show that was becoming increasingly thoughtful and emotionally rich. Larry Linville recognized this problem before anyone else did. Rather than stay on the show and repeating the same performance year after year, he made a difficult but respectful choice. At the end of Season 5, he decided not to renew his contract. Linville later explained that he had taken Frank Burns as far as the character could go. He did not want to water down the role or turn Frank into a parody of himself. This decision was not driven by conflict with the cast or producers. In fact, Linville remained on good terms with everyone involved. Frank Burns was written out of the show off-screen, receiving a promotion that removed him from the 4077th. There was no dramatic farewell episode, but his absence was immediately felt. With Frank gone, MASH Asterisk was free to explore deeper moral questions without relying on a cartoon villain. The humor became more subtle, and conflicts became more human. In many ways, Linville's exit marked a turning point, allowing the show to fully embrace its identity as a dramatic comedy rather than a traditional sitcom. After leaving MASH Asterisk, Linville continued acting in television and film, often in guest roles. However, he never again played a character as iconic as Frank Burns. While some actors might resent being remembered for a villainous role, Linville embraced it. He understood that Frank Burns had served an important purpose in the show's early years. Without Frank, the contrast between compassion and cruelty would not have been as clear. That Linville's departure also paved the way for the introduction of one of the show's most complex characters, Charles Emerson Winchester III. This transition symbolized the show's growth. Instead of a loud, obvious antagonist, the series introduced a quieter, more layered presence. This shift reflected the maturity of both the writing and the audience. Larry Linville's decision to leave MASH asterisk stands as an example of creative integrity. He chose quality over comfort and legacy over longevity. By knowing when to step away, he ensured that Frank Burns would remain memorable rather than overstaying his welcome. In doing so, Linville helped push MASH asterisk towards most critically acclaimed years. David Ogden Steyer's role in MASH asterisk represents the final stage of the show's evolution, where humor, intellect, and emotional depth blended into something truly timeless. When Steyers joined the series in Season 6 as Major Charles Emerson Winchester III, he was stepping into a difficult position. He was replacing Frank Burns, a character audiences had grown used to hating. Instead of trying to recreate the same type of villain, the writers and Steyers chose a completely different approach. Winchester was cultured, brilliant, arrogant, and emotionally guarded. He was not cruel for the sake of cruelty. He was complex, proud, and deeply human. At first, Winchester seemed cold and dismissive, especially toward Hawkeye and BJ. His love for classical music, fine wine, and high culture made him feel distant from the chaos of the 4077th. But over time, the audience began to see beneath the surface. Winchester was not heartless. He was deeply affected by the suffering around him, even if he rarely showed it. His quiet compassion emerged in subtle moments, revealing a man struggling to reconcile his privilege and ideals with the brutal reality of war. Unlike many of the actors who left MASH asterisk, Steyers did not depart due to frustration or conflict. He remained with the show until its final episode. His character's journey reached a natural and poetic conclusion, making his exit one of the most emotionally powerful moments in the series. In the finale, Winchester teaches captured enemy soldiers to play Mozart, only to later learn that they were killed. This moment shattered him, stripping away his emotional armor and forcing him to confront the full horror of war. It was a quiet, devastating scene that perfectly captured the show's message. War leaves no one untouched. After MASH asterisk ended, Steyers chose not to continue with the spin-off after MASH. He felt that Winchester's story had been fully told. This decision reflected the same sense of artistic respect that defined his time on the show. Steyers went on to enjoy a successful career as a voice actor, lending his rich voice to numerous animated films and television shows. He remained a respected figure in the industry, known for his intelligence, professionalism, and dignity. In later years, Steyers spoke openly about his personal life, including his sexuality. He explained that earlier in his career, he had chosen privacy out of fear that being open could limit his opportunities, especially in an industry that was not always accepting. When he eventually came out, he did so with quiet confidence, emphasizing honesty and self-respect rather than attention. His courage added another layer to his legacy, reminding fans that the people behind beloved characters often face their own private battles. Looking back, the departures of MASH asterisk actors were not signs of failure or conflict. They were reflections of growth, both personal and creative. Each exit reshaped the show, pushing it toward deeper storytelling and greater emotional honesty. McLean Stevenson's shocking goodbye reminded audiences of war's unpredictability. Wayne Rogers' quiet departure marked a shift in tone. Gary Berghoff's farewell highlighted the human cost of emotional labor. Larry Linville's exit allowed the show to mature, and David Ogden Steyer's presence brought it to its most refined form. MASH asterisk ended in 1983, but its legacy remains powerful. The show proved that television could be funny, heartbreaking, and meaningful all at once. The actors who left did not weaken the series. In many ways, they strengthened it. Their choices shaped the story, deepened its message, and helped turn MASH asterisk into one of the greatest television shows of all time. While much of the discussion around MASH asterisk focuses on the men who left the show, it would be a mistake to ignore the women who stayed and quietly reshaped the series from within. One of the most important figures in this transformation was Loretta Swit, who played Major Margaret Hot Lips Houlihan. Unlike many other characters, Margaret did not leave the show early, but her journey felt just as dramatic as any departure. In many ways, she represents a different kind of exit, not from the series, but from a stereotype. When MASH first began, Margaret Houlihan was written as a fairly one-dimensional character. She was strict, emotionally distant, and often used as a punchline. Her nickname, Hot Lips, reflected how the show initially treated her more as an object of humor than a fully realized person. She was often defined by her relationship with Frank Burns and her loyalty to military rules. However, Loretta Swit was never satisfied with this limited portrayal. She believed Margaret could be more, and over time, she fought quietly but persistently for that change. As the series evolved, Swit worked closely with the writers to develop Margaret into a stronger, more complex character. Gradually, Margaret became more independent, compassionate, and confident. Her relationship with Frank ended, and she began to stand on her own as a capable head nurse and a woman navigating a male-dominated war zone. This transformation did not happen overnight, but became one of the most rewarding character arcs in the show. Margaret stopped being a caricature and became a human being. What makes Loretta Swit's contribution so important is that she stayed when others left. She witnessed the show's creative shift firsthand and adapted along with it. While some actors felt their characters were shrinking, Swit ensured that Margaret grew. She pushed against lazy writing and refused to let the character remain stuck in outdated ideas about women. In doing so, she helped MASH reflect broader social changes happening in the real world, including the growing demand for stronger female representation on television. The women of MASH often had a harder job than the men. In a show filled with jokes, chaos, and male bonding, they had to fight to be seen as more than background characters. Loretta Swit succeeded because she believed in the importance of her role. She understood that women watching the show needed someone to relate to, someone who was strong without losing compassion. Margaret Houlihan eventually became that person. Swit was offered opportunities to leave the show, including roles in other series, but she chose to stay loyal to MASH star. She later explained that she felt a responsibility to the character and the audience. Leaving might have benefited her career in the short term, but staying allowed her to complete Margaret's journey. By the final season, Margaret was no longer Hot Lips. She was Major Houlihan, a respected professional and a symbol of growth. Her decision highlights an important truth about MASH star. Not every meaningful change came from actors leaving. Some of the most powerful transformations happened because actors stayed and fought for better storytelling. Loretta Swit's commitment ensured that MASH did not just tell stories about men coping with war, but also about women finding their strength in impossible conditions. In the end, the legacy of MASH is not just about who left and why. It is about how every departure and every decision to stay shaped the soul of the show. Together, these choices created a series that still resonates decades later, reminding viewers that growth often comes through difficult change, whether that change means walking away or standing your ground.